thank you very, very much for having given us the honor of coming today to speak at the conference where we were looking at the European-Russian relationship. I wanted to ask a few questions following up on your lecture and the discussion, in particular about cultural diplomacy. Cultural diplomacy in the past used to be a vehicle to win the hearts and minds of foreign audiences. During the Cold War, of course, was one of the heydays. Very much was also about persuasion, getting sort of other countries to like you, or this power of attraction. But I was curious today, the cultural diplomacy seems more about building understanding and building trust, really a two-way street. Listening is even more important than speaking in that sense. And I wanted to ask, from the point of view of Moldova, is cultural diplomacy important? Is that also part of the overall strategy of foreign policy? And also for the former Soviet states, do you see a role in the future for more cultural diplomacy?
Absolutely. I'm an advocate of continuing to use culture diplomacy, not looking back yards towards a period of Cold War between West and the East. But I'm confident that cultural diplomacy is an important tool of establishing so-called confidence-building measures. It's a component of these measures, and indeed, each country will know very much more better another country, another civilization, another culture, if the contact between both on the multilateral level will be preserved permanently, and the contacts will be encouraged to be established in different ways on the cultural level between the culture artists, writers, young people on the university levels, and so on and so forth. It's a very, very influent component of the foreign diplomacy, should be a component of foreign diplomacy of each modern country, actually. And of course, Republic of Moldova plays a huge role also in cultural diplomacy. Unfortunately, in our financial, not very rich situation, but we are we are trying to find necessary resources in order to satisfy also the cultural needs, to present Moldova abroad, and to make more visible Republic of Moldova in other, not only European, but all around the world countries about my homeland, as I may say that.
Okay.
Continue about international relations. I know that Moldova and Russia, they marked the 20th anniversary of establishing of diplomatic relations. And could you please make a brief remark about these relations, how they have been changed during the years?
Well, indeed, Republic of Moldova last year celebrated 20 years of its independence, and of course, in this year we have a long list of celebrating 20 years anniversary of establishing diplomatic relations with a huge amount of countries all around the world. And as concerning Russian Federation, of course, this 20 years history of our diplomatical relations or diplomatical behavior between Moldova and Russian Federation was, of course, on the basis of sinusoidal development. It was a warm period, it was a cold period between both countries, but I consider it's normal. If somebody talks you that between in the family you have also warm and cold periods between husband and wife, and it's quite normal also between countries the same evolution of relations. But it seems to be the intelligence of the leadership to find a proper solution of each problem between both countries. And of course, I do believe that nowadays we succeed after 20 years history of our diplomatic relations to establish a very pragmatic and very mutual useful relations between our both countries. But with exception of one big problem which still needs to be solved, and I'm talking here about Transnistrian settlement process, which indeed, if Russian Federation will show a political will or goodwill on this sense, it could be solved very easy and very fast with help of Moscow side, and together with proper assistance from European Union and United States, of course, also. That's why 20 years, it's not a big deal, but it's a very, very deep in our souls, and we, as a former Soviet Union republic, and our population being educated in understanding the art of thinking of Russian Federation, understanding Russian culture, and not only Russian, but Ukraine also, and Kazakh culture, because the Soviet Union was a multi-culti and a huge means of this world, of course, for us, Russian Federation should remain not only from political point of view one of the strategic partner, but also a very important cultural partner and very important, indeed, economical one.
Thank you.
And I have another question. You talked about warm and cold relations in the past between Moldova and Russia. What do you see in the future? What is the nearest future? Will there be warm, or do you see any cold relations coming? Or the nearest future, at least?
I'm not in a position to make some provisions what will happen in the next 5 or 10 years, but my assessment is that everything are on the hand of politicians once more, and if and you know very well that each country deserve its leadership, and I hope that our both country deserve in a good manner our leaderships for next 10 or perhaps 15 years, and in this way continuing to build warm relations between both countries, and to try to find a mutual understanding in all possible problems which could be appear on this way. And once more, it's everything and depends on the level of education, level of perception of the modern world, and art of perception also of rule of modern games and the geopolitical level.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe just to conclude then, if you could maybe give me an example of cultural diplomacy from Moldavia, maybe something that has been done in the past, or something you think that might be interesting in the future.
Well, just an example of cultural diplomacy, it could be, of course, the ties between universities, because the young generation is the future of each nation, the future of each country, and each country should pay a huge attention on educating the next political leadership of this very country. And of course, Republic of Moldova, not only, I'm not talking about only my country, which I'm representing here, but just look around in the region. All world experience, best experience, or the best examples in this way shows that each country who invests a necessary amount of attention and money in the education next generation, it brings not immediate feedbacks, but it brings definitely very positive feedbacks and middle and long-term perspectives. And if in the modern world a country would like to survive and would like to be a competitive one in the modern economy competition, should invest in the young generation and should invest in the building system, educational system. And one of the component of this investment is, of course, the ties between universities, fast way abroad from the national territory. And we are living now in a global world, and we are not talking in a global world. We cannot anymore speak about nationalities, about sovereignties, and so on and so on. This means could be very fast, old-fashioned one. In a global world, we have to think locally and to act globally in the positive manner of this world. And that's why the cultural diplomacy, in the Soviet era, it was relations between former Soviet republics from 15 Soviet, if you remember perhaps in the TV shows, Soviet so-called TV shows, where different concerts, cultural changes, young students changes, and so on and so forth. I remember very well because I was young at that time, when just shortly before the collapse of the Soviet Union, and I remember very well this Soviet practice. Nowadays, it's a much more intelligent one. Nowadays, the civilization developed itself, and now we have another tools in doing something like cultural diplomacy, and we call it public diplomacy, perhaps more proper. But public diplomacy includes also as a component cultural diplomacy too. But each embassy and each ambassador could spend years and years try to explain in the residence country what about his own homeland and try to establish good relations between both countries. But part of the cultural diplomacy or public diplomacy is also soccer games, championship. That's a very best example of doing diplomacy in a cultural manner. When a soccer team win a championship, doesn't matter which one, but the names of this country immediately appears on the lips of that region of which championship is. Art, a beautiful theater team, a beautiful concert team, they're the real ambassadors and diplomats of their own country. That's why the culture diplomacy, my personal, and I'm very convicted on this, culture diplomacy, public diplomacy, is much more powerful instrument of doing diplomacy at all, like a classical diplomacy, as I'm representing now here.
All right, well, it's good to hear the optimism, and we look forward to a future of more Moldavian cultural diplomacy, and also hopefully collaborating with you in the embassy. But thank you very, very much for having come
I
today.
have to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be together with you and to hear some wonderful questions, very intelligent participants on your courses, what you're organizing here. Thank you very much, and definitely we will keep in touch. And,
Thank you very much then.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the collaboration.